Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Cloud Show. Today, we're going to talk about some really cool building patterns when you build applications in the cloud. To help you build better and faster applications, there is an open source project called Dapr, and I'm going to talk to one of the community managers of Dapr. It's going to be interesting. We're going to talk about how to build effective applications for the cloud and lots of things like that. So the star of the show today is Marc Duiker. Hello, Marc. Welcome to the Cloud Show.
Thank you so much, Magnus. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my pleasure indeed. It's lovely to have you. I know that we tried to schedule this a couple of times and we had to reschedule, but here we are. Finally, yeah. It's nice to be here with you. So let's start to check in on you, sir. What's going on? What's going on in your life, and who are you?
Right. So, hi, I'm Marc. You already gave me an introduction that I'm one of the Dapr community managers. There are 3 community managers in total. I've been doing this for about 2.5 years now, I think. And so it's really like an open source role, right? Because the role that gives me money is actually being like a developer advocate for Diagrid. And that's actually the company founded by the co-creators of Dapr open source, Mark Vossel and Jeroen Schneider. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I've been very fortunate to join as a developer advocate, and then also getting this role as a community manager. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's really a super nice role, because like I had lots of audience engagement, of course, lots of public speaking. I just finished our community call, which we do like once a month. So I'm just rolling from one StreamYard session to another StreamYard session. So I feel like completely at ease here.
That's lovely. And so where does one go if one wants to find the Dapr community calls?
So there are live streams like via StreamYard, but we stream to both like YouTube and LinkedIn and on X as well. The best place is YouTube. So there's the @DaprDev channel on YouTube, and that's really the best place to watch, because if you leave like comments there, we can actually see it and respond to you. So that's the best place.
Yeah. All right, lovely. So I said in the intro, we're going to talk about some nice ways to build cloud applications. Not only cloud applications, but that's how I personally have been in touch with the Dapr, because I'm a cloud guy, and I have over many years I have helped companies and teams and people to build applications for the cloud, and it's challenging. But a tool, a project like an open source project like Dapr can really help. So tell us, first of all, which is the problem that we're facing here with building applications like this?
One of the problems that we're facing is that let's say the whole development life cycle can become quite tedious if you're like building microservices and distributed applications. Because you have a lot of things going on, right? You have many different services that need to be spun up at the same time. The testing becomes difficult. Usually you have a dependence on like cloud resources, right? So maybe you want to do some like easy developing locally, but sometimes you cannot do that because you need to connect to a stage store in the cloud, or you need to connect to a message store in the cloud, and that can be really tricky sometimes. So yeah, that's one of the reasons that the Dapr open source project.
Right. So from my own experience, then we have a web application or something, an API, and then we have to connect to a database, and then we might need to use a caching service, and then we might need to use Azure storage and whatnot. And all of these things have an API, and all of these things you have to implement the usage patterns that works with that service, or using a Cosmos DB, and how do I know that I'm using it properly, and various things, right?
Visual SDKs, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, all of them have an SDK, and all of them have a way to use them, right? And so I have to author that custom code for all of those.
Exactly, yeah. So you need to learn all of these SDKs of all these individual products out there, and if you're and if you're dealing with one cloud, well, one cloud has dozens of these services already. But if you're dealing with multiple clouds, well, then you just have a multiplication factor of so many different state stores or so many message brokers. So if you're doing hybrid cloud or multi-cloud, it becomes like an exponentially difficult thing to have all the knowledge of all these SDKs, how to deal with resiliency and security, and that's what Dapr
that takes time and effort, right? So how does then Dapr come into this? What do we like? How do I put Dapr in there and helps me with this?
Yeah, so the role of Dapr is really, let's say, quite unusual. So when I first ran into it, I thought, oh, really? Dapr is not part of your own application, but it runs in a separate process next to your application. So the sidecar pattern, because it's you can maybe visualize like a sidecar motorcycle, where the Dapr process sits in the sidecar of the motor. But that takes away a lot of the heavy lifting that you as a developer would normally do. So, for instance, if you need to write resilient code and you want to include like a retry mechanism or something, well, you either take a dependency from a certain package, or you write it yourself. But there can be different retry mechanisms again on the different SDKs. But in this case, Dapr provides like a built-in mechanism for retries and resiliency and for timeouts. Whatever you are calling, all of the communication goes through this sidecar. So you as a developer don't have to worry about retry mechanisms, because that's what Dapr is doing.
Yeah. So that's the, I think, the canonical and really cool example that and there are many other applications and ways to use Dapr and connect to different services. But one of the really good ones is what you're saying there. There is the retry mechanism. And okay, why are we retrying? Well, it's because our application runs where it runs in some sort of a compute service, right? It's running in a web app or in a container app or somewhere. And it calls to a different service, storage, for example. I'm just calling storage. What if storage doesn't respond the way we expect? What do? I retry. I figure out how to retry again, and usually oftentimes that solves the issue. And so retrying is code that I have to write and understand how to write and get it right and do it right. And Dapr has already implemented that for me.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Brilliant. So how do I then, like, from my code, how do I call this thing? What do I do?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So Dapr provides like a whole API service that you can use in your application. So, for instance, your application, let's say we are talking to Cosmos DB to store some state. So in your application, you would normally use the Cosmos DB SDK. But when you use Dapr, you use the Dapr SDK, or you make HTTP or gPC calls straight into the Dapr sidecar. So you don't have dependencies anymore in your application code to the underlying infrastructure. So
right. There's no dependency on the specific SDK or SDK version or whatnot of whatever API we're calling.
Exactly, yeah. And so Dapr actually decouples your application from the underlying infrastructure. Yeah, so you can see it as like an abstraction layer, and it has APIs for like state management and for pub/sub and for like secret stores. It has a built-in workflow engine now. There's an actor model is built in. So you can see, like, with Dapr, you have like an entire tool belt at your servers, and you could just pick tools from the tool belt and use it. And if there's in your tool belt a lot of tools, you don't have to use all of them. Just use the stuff that you actually need.
Yeah, because I mean, that when you think about it, that's really just good architecture, right? If you're a software architect, that's just good architecture to abstract away the specific implementation of a specific storage. Do I need to have a reference to the storage SDK inside of my code? Not really. I should be using an interface or similar to say, hey, store file. My code that needs to store a file doesn't need to know about which storage mechanism it is that I'm in fact using, right?
Exactly. Yeah,
that's just good architecture. I wish everyone did that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, it has. So it's not only useful for doing like hybrid cloud or multi-cloud, but it's also very useful when you compare like doing local development and then pushing to test or another.
Smart, because it's just an abstraction at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So when I just do some local development for like a proof of concept code, I use like an in-memory state store, which of course like you can see it more like a cache. But for my local running proof of concept, that's totally fine. But when I want to push
Right.
it, then I just change one of the Dapr component files, which is a YAML file, and then point to like a different state store like Cosmos DB, and no application changes are required.
Right. So you can have a pretty rudimentary, simplified state store or local version, and then I say, okay, but when I run in the Azure cloud, I want to use Cosmos DB, for example.
Exactly.
And then technically, if you ran in another cloud, you could say, I want to deploy the same application, but now I'm using a different state store. I'm using what, for example?
Yeah, well, you could use like S3 or something there if you want to do.
Right, an S3 bucket in Amazon or something like that. Yeah. And that's just, at that point, that's just technically a configuration change.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no code change involved.
No. That's really the power of Dapr. That it only requires some YAML files, which of course, and nobody really wants to write YAML. But there are also some tools for that, to be honest. But yeah, it is like a super convenient way to just write.
I'm gonna be honest and say that I've said in a couple of these shows that there's probably no technology that I like less that we have to use than YAML.
yeah, and I agree.
but fair enough. So you the point still is that the code that handles all of that messiness, which you can swap for any other kind of mess, is separate from your code, and it is a separate concern, and you call it from your code as a separate process. One process calls a different process, says, hey, I want to store this file, and that whatever it's configured to do, it's going to ring up that storage service and do its magic. And if it needs retries, it's going to do retries and various things.
Yeah,
that's absolutely brilliant, because I've seen so many over the years. Goodness me, I've seen so many interesting ones. I was I'll just share a brief anecdote and probably make you laugh a little. There was a gentleman who was deploying an application, and we were testing it, and it was a cloud application and was using Azure storage. And he was like, okay, this I've deployed it, test it, see what you like. And we started testing, and it was really slow, and something wasn't really working. So we're like, oh, what's up here? And so I started looking into the storage traffic and like checking the monitoring, like how many requests are made to storage. And I just noticed this really weird pattern of requests. I'm like, this makes sense. And can I check on your code there? And he literally had copied the getting started bit from the Azure documentation and pasted it into his, and it worked, right? So what he did all the time was that in every time he touched storage, he first checked to see, does this storage account exist? Oh yeah. Does this container exist? Yes, it does. And then he went to proceed to store his server. So he made several round trips extra for everything that he did, right? And it's a classic thing that the person who made it work didn't really have cloud mileage and deep understanding. You know what I mean? Sorry for the anecdote there, but you know what I mean. This is a common problem, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's also very hard to fix that, So you always need like a certain level of understanding, even if you use Dapr, right? So even if you don't really know all of the, or don't need to know all of the SDKs, it's still good to understand the underlying model, where your data actually is, or what kind of message you're actually using. But sometimes it also depends on what kind of organization you are, right? Because some development teams, you need to do everything. They're like truly DevOps. You build it, you run it. For some teams, they have maybe like dedicated platform engineering teams, and they can have like the ownership of all of the infrastructure and how it works and why it works. And then you can give the Dapr APIs to the developers, and they can be like completely agnostic of whatever they're running on.
Yeah. And I really like that. Again, that's just good architecture for me. So how big is Dapr now? I mean, the huge companies using Dapr, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So Dapr, so Dapr is part of the CNCF, the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. It's been part of that since I think 3.5 years already now. But since last November, it became a graduated project, which is a really big thing in the CNCF. And you actually get like audited, like a really really big audit, and then they go and interview like Dapr end users. So what do the end users actually think of Dapr? How do they use it? What are the benefits? Get all kinds of security tests and so on and so on. So yeah, it's a really big thing to be a graduated project within the CNCF. It really means that some big companies are indeed using
exactly
Dapr.
Yeah, so exciting. Really, this is such a unique service in the cloud. I've been in the cloud for a long time, and when I heard the founders of the sort of the project or the open source project starting talking like, oh, we're going to go open source with this, I was like, that's brilliant. And so the community is thriving. I mean, this is what you do. You're a community manager. How's the community?
So I think in numbers, so we have a pretty big Discord. I think there's over 8,000 members in the Discord. Wow. So they're not active all the time, all these 8,000 members, but on any given moment on the Discord, there are like 500 to 600 users online there. So that's definitely the best place if you have questions about Dapr, or maybe you want to help out other people to become successful with Dapr. The Dapr Discord is definitely the place to be. Yeah.
Right. What's the typical usage of Dapr? Like, what kind of a team is there? Maybe there isn't a typical one, but
no, it's great. Yeah, it varies a lot on it. Yes, sometimes we see backend developers really. It's usually like a bottom-up approach, right? So the developers see it because they went to maybe one of my sessions at the conference, or they just stumbled upon the Dapr.io website and read about it and try it. So developers get excited. Sometimes it's via more the platform engineering angle. So platform engineers, they always look for standards and easy ways to configure things, but also to be very flexible without changing a million things. So they discover Dapr and then mention it to their development teams. Okay, you should probably write your applications using Dapr. Those are the two routes we see. So it's either from the backend developers themselves, or from the platform engineers who are
kind of sneaks in,
to really be successful and quickly deploy stuff in the cloud.
All right. Yeah. So as a sort of a rounding off today's episode, I'm new to Dapr. What am I going to do? Like, how do I like what I heard here today, Marc. I'd like to get into this. How do I do it? What do I do?
Well, the first thing, go to the website. It's Dapr.io. That's the best starting point because that points to all of the other places where you can learn about Dapr. So there's a quick starts repository also linked to Dapr.io, and they can just clone that locally. You can run all the samples locally because we are all using local components, so it's easy to run locally. And next to that, via Diagrid, I've created a lot of learning content that's called Dapr University. So that's also linked from the Dapr.io website. It's like a free online sandbox where you just run Dapr applications in an online sandbox environment. So that's probably the easiest because you don't have to install anything locally.
Oh, by the way, we didn't mention compatibility, right? How many languages can you use Dapr from?
Right. Well, yeah. So since it's run in a sidecar, it runs in a separate application. You can use any language with Dapr as long as you can make like HTTP calls to the Dapr sidecar.
But there are just about anything.
Exactly. But to make it a bit easier to communicate to the sidecar, there are some language SDKs. So there's a .NET SDK, Java, Python, JavaScript. There's Go. There's even a PHP one as well.
Make it even easier for you. As if it wasn't easy enough. Exactly. Makes it even easier still. All right, brilliant.
Yeah. So no matter what
anything else you need to know before we close out?
No. Well, one thing that I always want to know if there are people out there who are using Dapr, then please come and find me, because I'm always looking for case studies that can be published on the CNCF website, because it's always nice to share what people have been building. So if you go to the CNCF website now, go to case studies and filter on Dapr. I think there are now 12 case studies mentioned there. And so if you want to know, which actual companies are successful with Dapr, go to that. But I'm always looking for more of these case studies. Yeah.
All right. I was trying to see if we can get the URL on the screen, but at least it's Dapr.io is the main resource to go to. And then you're working for Datagrid, and Datagrid has a Dapr University where you can learn how to get into it even more. So that's another starting point with Datagrid Datagrid. Yes. Brilliant. Well, I mean, I guess that's it. There we go. Datagrid Dapr University. Fantastic. All right, I think that's sort of the end signal right there. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was absolutely lovely talking. I love Dapr. I love the technology. I love the problem that it solves. So I'm so happy that you were on the show today, Marc.
Thank you so much, Magnus. Lovely.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. Absolutely. And come back anytime. So, audience, we will see you guys next time on The Cloud Show.